Hi, in this video I want to discuss maybe a couple of topics, just general ideas, basic ideas of what our expectations and what we can expect and how we let those expectations often get in the way of what we irrational, let it get in the control our irrationality in many ways. So we're letting the best get in the way of the better or whatever, having an expectation of an end and letting that get in the way and almost setting yourself up for failure when you realize that there's only so much you can do to reach that positive end that you expected. Obviously, we're not always living exactly the theater that we live in our lives. Obviously, things aren't exactly exact when it comes to those circumstances, but we can do our best. But sometimes we have too high an expectation, and that's exactly what we're trying to combat, is these expectations that we experience on a daily basis, and how we let the best get in the way of the better, and how we look at it as another thing as a process. Maybe the best is going to come soon. Maybe the outcome that you're looking for just takes a process. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a mechanism for hope, but it's a mechanism for understanding how the way the world can work and how the process can get from the perspective of a zero-sum game. Obviously, we're talking about things getting better from a worse perspective, or from a worse state. Obviously, it takes that worst state for things to have to get better. Really, generally speaking, obviously, it's just a matter of zero-sum. No matter how good you feel, there's a better only around the corner, and the better you feel, there's only more negative for you to fall down to. There's only the taller you are, the harder you're going to fall, and then the taller you get, the more you're going to feel the fall on yourself. So a lot of these issues do come to that kind of semantics argument. So regardless of that, yes, letting the best get in the way, imagining the end, imagining some kind of super ending that you expect because it's part of your expectations that you're building up because it's synonymous with that. You're not going to necessarily expect the worst when it comes to your expectations of what you want. So when it comes to what you want, you're going to expect the best in many ways. So you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're almost in a way demotivating yourself once you think about that beyond that or outside of that expectation. Um, but obviously, this has to do with letting the best get in the way. And if you're imagining that, it's not as much of an issue. But yes, we often let the best get in the way of the better once it's happened. Once we're there and the best didn't happen and the better happened, we took one step forward instead of two steps forward, like we expected at least. Based on our expectation, the best could have been more or less or whatever it may have been, we took one step forward. Um, then yes, obviously that's one of the considerations that you can understand. That you shouldn't let necessarily the best get in the way of the better, because it's not necessarily a function to live by, because otherwise you wouldn't be really functioning, because obviously we're living in a world where everything's not going to go exactly the way we plan it, or is not going to go exactly beyond our expectations. Often, many times, it's going to be within a limit or whatever it may be, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's something that we got to understand is something that we have to look at and consider, at the very least. And that's another good thing to understand. And you shouldn't let the best get in the way of the better. Obviously, especially imagining things and letting that get in the way of of what could be getting better, and letting go of that better and just saying screw it all. That's not always the best thing. Anyway, the other subject I want to discuss is how it's perfectly exact, things happening exactly the same way. I mentioned this in some of the previous videos I made recently. It's getting in the way. It's perfectly exact. Things happening the exact same way. Sort of like the puddle argument or the cup analogy I used, or whatever it may have been. Landing, we're not discussing the cup of water in the cup. We're discussing how it got in there, even though that's irrelevant. We're discussing the water and the contours and how it's going based on the function of the existence that it has, as opposed to how it got there. Because how it got there, there's no how it got there, it was already there. Why expect there was a pour of the water when the water was just already in the cup? Why do you need that just because we pour water into the cup? Sometimes nature can pour the water into the cup. Sometimes the water was already in the cup. Why is water water? Why is the water already in the cup? The answer could be the same. Regardless of that, things are not necessarily exactly the same just because of those circumstances. Yes, I don't know where I was going with that, but regardless, yes, because it happened exactly the way it happened, that's just synonymous with existence moving forward, determinism, cause and effect. Things are happening the way they're happening because that's the way they're happening. That's just explaining an extra layer of something that doesn't need to be explained. It's perfectly exact. That doesn't mean there's any God controlling things exactly, because a God would only make mistakes, and regardless of how perfect it was. Who's to say that things exactly being the way they exactly happen is not good enough? Because if anything, the things happening is the perfect expectation, or the perfect thing for things to happen exactly the way they're happening. So regardless, there's not a necessary thing for like such a God or something like that to exist.
So all of that stuff is just superficial speculation that doesn't need to be considered because it's just based on nothing but itself that can it be proven with. So unlike all the facts that we use to deduct from all deduct from the environment that we can realize that there is something in this world that's explaining itself as opposed to a book that can only explain itself. This is explaining it to us. A book can only, with the proof of the world based on cause and effect, exposed to a book that's stagnating, not constantly changing, sitting there with the same text that can be misconstrued in all sorts of different ways. So obviously this thing cannot be taken seriously. So it's one of those issues that we're dealing with. But yeah, it can only be explained by itself as opposed to the world explaining it. And that's the thing that we're explaining. The Bible's explaining the world, but it only has proof of itself, or any of these books. Well, the world is explaining itself because it's existing exactly the way it is, based on previous events and so on and so forth. It's going to go a certain way, and it's explaining it to us based on exactly what we're looking at. We're not taking a middleman or a middle thing and looking at that, then looking at the world. We're looking at the world as opposed to looking at the world through a book. Anyway, regardless of that, that's all I need to say really on the subject. So if there's anything else I need to say, there's another time, another place. So that's really that all needs to be mentioned. So anyway, thank you, and until next time. If there's anything that needs to be mentioned on the subject again, there's always another video, another time, another place. Bye.